Hello, and welcome to Baha'i Blogcast, with me, your host, Rainn Wilson. This is where I interview members of the Baha'i Faith and other friends from all over the world about their hearts and minds and souls, their spiritual journeys, what they're interested in, and what makes them tick. Enjoy. Hello, listeners to the Baha'i Blogcast. It's me, Rainn Wilson. How's it going, listeners? I don't know what to call you guys. I feel like I need a nickname for the, as I've said, dozens of Baha'i Blogcast listeners that are out there. Thanks for tuning in on this extra special episode. And I say that about every episode, too. I say, oh, this very special episode. Oh, I'm so excited about this one. Let me just put it this way. I am equally as excited about this conversation that I'm about to have as I have been with so many great conversations of the past, like Joy DeGruy and Tierney Sutton and Stephen Phelps. So I'm equal excited, and this is equal special podcast. So this is typical. So this is a typical podcast. So welcome to a profoundly typical podcast. And you hear giggling on the other end. You hear my dear friend, incredible musician, scholar, human being, with an incredible head of hair, by the way, Luke Slott, who's Skyping in with me from Dublin. Hi, Luke.
Hi, Rainn. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. Your hair is really magnificent. I had hair like that when I was in my 20s, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I got good hair on both sides of the family. So.
Oh, okay, good. Irish people tend to have really nice hair. Don't you think?
Or maybe just messy. I don't know.
It's messy, but it's colorful and windswept, and it's like the heather on the hillocks, and it's it's Gaelic and ancient and melodious.
It's part of the landscape.
It's part of the landscape. Exactly. So, Luke, I'm so excited to talk to you. And for you viewers who don't know, listeners who don't know, Luke is a terrific Baha'i musician, singer, songwriter. I'm mostly familiar with his devotional music that he does based on the writings, soaring, elegant melodies, really haunting, gorgeous stuff. We got to perform together. Well, he performed and I emceed a couple of events and just fell in love with him and his music, and he's a dear person, as you will soon find out. Luke, you're in Dublin. What are you doing in Dublin?
I'm in Dublin preparing for the release of my new album, Year of the Nightingale, which I've been working on, especially as a kind of tribute to the celebration of the bicentennial of the Birth of Baha'u'llah. So it's an exciting time. It's real crunch time now as I'm preparing for the album release. And I'm getting the songs lined up to release one at a time throughout the period of the fast. So it's going to be a special release where I'll release one song every other day throughout the fast. And then at the end of March, the album will be officially released.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. I look forward to hearing those. But it's all finished, right? It's all been mixed and
it's all tracked, mixed, mastered, done. It's I can't believe it. It's been a really long long project that's been kind of on and off for years. The way it really eventually got finished was through the support of friends supporting a Kickstarter campaign to actually really drive the album forward, because I'd been working on the album with a very dear friend, Kelly Snook, who's producing the album and has been working with me on all of the musical arrangements of the songs. And we had worked on it for sort of arranging the songs and doing little bits of work on it here and there for several years. But we were never able to finish it because it was such a big project and we had so much that we wanted to put into the songs. But we didn't have the resources to actually be able to do what we envisioned.
Now, how is this project different than your other CDs in the past? You say this is bigger. How in what ways is it bigger? I've listened to the album. It's exquisite and extraordinary, and it definitely has more production and more complexity to it. And your songs have always had a certain kind of acoustic simplicity to them, and this feels more orchestrated, more produced. There's different sounds. Is that what makes it more complicated or more challenging?
Both the amount of of detail involved in it, and also the amount of time that was put into refining every sound. So there are a lot more musicians involved in this project than in previous projects. Actually, some of my previous recordings were very stripped down guitar and voice, sometimes a little bit of drum and bass. But this one has, horn sections, string sections, multiple sort of guitar tracking and harmonies. And Kelly has a lot of sort of very kind of unique production methods of layering sounds, layers upon layers upon layers of different sounds that kind of, weave in and out of each other and create a whole kind of soundscape around the words. And so just the whole work of actually orchestrating those sounds, and then through the process of mixing and editing, like refining down those sounds. So really it was a huge amount of time that we put into actually the refinement of the album. And, once the instruments were tracked.
And how did that feel, doing a crowd-funded album? This is the first time you've done that?
It was the first time I did it, yeah. It took me a long time to kind of, build up the courage to do it. The idea of sitting down in front of a camera and asking people for money for a project just terrified me. Mm-hmm. And for many years, I'd seen other friends do it, and I just thought, no, I could never do that. I wouldn't have the guts to do that. But just through, conversations with friends.
Now, you met your goal. What was your original goal?
The original goal was $25,000.
In what? And how much time did you give yourself to raise it?
A month. So it was whole month of September.
And then how quickly did you raise it?
It was 23 hours was the goal was reached. So
That's amazing. That's amazing. You gave yourself 30 days and you got it in one day.
It was that was a key moment in my life, because it was just more than the numbers. It was the feeling of support that came in. For several years I've been traveling around to visit different communities and to play at different sort of firesides and devotionals and things like that. I just met people in different parts of the world over the years. And then on that day, the support that came in, it was just staggering. I was jittery for days. I couldn't believe what had happened.
So then you were able to up the budget for the production and whatnot.
Yeah. So our original idea was to record and release this album in 2017, kind of in honor of the bicentennial. And we also we had a kind of a vague idea that, well, if things go well and we manage to do this, maybe we could also think about doing a second album in 2019 for the bicentennial of the birth of the Bab. But when we reached the goal for the Kickstarter, we just thought, well, why don't we just try and raise the funds for the second album right now? And so we put together a little announcement, and I just put up a little video on the Kickstarter, announced that we, this special stretch goal to make a second album for 2019. And then by the end of the month, we had reached this second goal, and that we doubled the goal, and we had the funds for two albums. So
that's
once
fantastic.
Once we finish this first album, we need to get cracking on the second album. And everyone who supported the Kickstarter is going to receive the second album as well automatically in 2019.
That's wonderful. What a great story. But I imagine it's some pressure too. You feel a responsibility to all those donors.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We got our work cut out for us.
Great. Well, I know I donated and I got a free Skype session with Luke Slott. And I'm taking that free Skype session. You wrote me and you're like, hey, Rainn, you want to have a free Skype session? I was like, yes, and I want to interview you for the Skype session. So I'm just using you for my own nefarious projects.
Rainn, thank you for your support.
But let's go back to the very beginning. So how did you hear about the Baha'i Faith? How did you become a Baha'i?
I first heard about the Baha'i Faith from my brother, Mike. It was a little bit unusual because I grew up in Dublin. My family was a little bit unusual because we had a very non-religious upbringing. Most of my friends growing up in the 80s were, either Catholic or Protestant, went to church on Sundays. Whereas my parents came from a mix of Jewish and Catholic backgrounds, but they neither of them were practicing. And my brother and I weren't raised with any religious practice at all, or any kind of faith community or anything. But when my brother went off to Scotland to go to college, he went to study music technology. he's a music producer himself, and he went to study music technology in Glasgow. And while he was there, he met some Baha'is, and he began to study the Baha'i Faith. And we were all quite surprised when he called home one day and said that he wanted to be a Baha'i. He had found this faith that he loved, and he had been looking into it. And actually, the only person in the family who knew what the Baha'i Faith was our mother, who years before had actually gone on a Mediterranean cruise to Israel and had actually visited the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, kind of as a tourist, and had, this was long before the terraces were complete, or any of the, the way it is now. It didn't look like that. Probably back in the 70s, before we were born. She had gone there, and she remembered a few Baha'i principles that she had picked up while she was visiting the World Center. And so she said, "Oh yes, I remember this. This is fine," and because that was quite reassuring, because
she was like, "It's legit." She legitimized.
Yeah,
it.
well, but we grew up. Our mother was always very careful to tell us, be careful of, there are groups out there who, maybe their intentions aren't very good, and you have to be careful who you talk to and who you get involved with. And so we were always quite kind of vigilant about, growing up and talking to different groups. But she knew that the Baha'i Faith was good. And so it was very much accepted in the family when my brother became a Baha'i. And at first I wasn't really interested, because, like I said, we had no, upbringing. We had no religion in our upbringing. And so I wasn't really interested at first, but little by little I began to, I would have conversations with my brother. I would visit him in Glasgow, and I started to meet some of his new Baha'i friends, his odd new Baha'i friends that I actually felt really drawn to and liked being around. And I just found that. Did
you have a profound spiritual experience? Or was it just a very slow kind of coming into the Baha'i community and studying the writings? Was there any specific thing that happened that really drew you ultimately?
I think it was both. It was first a slow sense of attraction to the teachings, and to these new Baha'i people that I was meeting, that I just felt drawn to be around. And slowly I found that, my interest was increasing whenever my brother mentioned something, particularly when he mentioned to me one day the Baha'i principle of independent investigation of truth. And this really struck me, because, growing up, I had such little understanding of religion that I think, I had a lot of, I think I had a lot of prejudices about religion, but I just didn't want to be involved with it, didn't want to know about it.
Sure.
And didn't want anything to do with it. And I think when my brother said this thing about independent investigation of truth, I thought, wow, I've never heard of religion talking about this kind of thing. And so I thought, well, if there's any truth to this Baha'i thing, maybe it's worth investigating just on my own, independently, as it's suggested. And so I picked up a few Baha'i books, and I looked up the Baha'i Center back home in Dublin, and got some information. And there I got involved in a Ruhi book. So there was some friends at the Baha'i Center there who, basically, I knocked on the door asking for information, and they said, "Oh, well, there's a course happening if you'd like to learn more about the faith." And so I joined this course, which was Ruhi Book 1, and that was nice. Every Thursday night I would kind of sneak out, go down to the Baha'i Center and do Ruhi Book 1. And I think the more that, the more I read the writings in the Ruhi book, and just in private study reading books. And I think one of the first books I read was Baha'u'llah and the New Era, which I felt was a great introduction. But then I remember, if you asked about a particular spiritual experience. During that whole time, one of my brother's friends in Glasgow very kind of casually just offered me a copy of The Hidden Words. And this was really my first book of Baha'i writings, like an actual direct book. And so I took this home, and I remember just sitting down, reading through the whole thing one evening and having no idea what it was talking about.
Sure.
But feeling like I couldn't put it down. And there was something that I just felt, there was reading that book, I just felt like a kind of presence that I had never felt before and never, I didn't, I had no, it was something so unfamiliar, but something so comforting that I wanted more of it, whatever it was. And there was a particular verse in the Hidden Words that kept coming back to me, which is one of the early ones. It goes, "O Son of Being, thy paradise is my love, thy heavenly home reunion with me. Enter therein and tarry not. This is that which hath been destined for thee in our kingdom above and our exalted dominion." This verse it just swam around in my head for several weeks. And
almost like song lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah. After some time, I kind of couldn't resist anymore. And I was thinking, what am I tarrying for? I love this. I need this. I need to step into this. And
so you decided to tarry not.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And so many of your songs are based on the Hidden Words, and that's a very special book to you. How then did you integrate your songwriting and your newfound faith?
So that was something of it was a strange challenge I was faced with in how to find some kind of harmony between my songwriting and the work that I was doing as a musician.
What kind of work were you doing as a musician before you became a Baha'i? And how did becoming a Baha'i change that?
Well, mostly songwriting. I had been in a band throughout my teens and early 20s. I was in a band. Just coming out of school, we had got a deal. We'd signed a deal, and we were basically, straight out of high school, we were full-time in the band, touring around Ireland and the UK. And we had released a couple of singles. And we were actually in the middle of recording an album, and about halfway through the album, we got dropped.
Oh my goodness!
Got dropped by the label, yeah. So, it was tough at the time, but really, what happened after we got dropped was that, we got dropped from the label and we split up, and there I was with no job. I wasn't in college, and I had a lot of time, and that was the time when I decided that I had a lot of time to read, and I was going to investigate this faith that my brother had joined. And so that was actually, it was quite a special time when I had that time to, really immerse myself in a personal study of the faith. But that also brought up the challenge of how to figure out how I would integrate my music and my faith. And it was something of a challenge because, as I said, I hadn't been raised with any faith at all. So, in a sense, music had really been like my religion. It was something that I was so deeply immersed in. I practiced in the way you practice a religion. I practiced and practiced and practiced.
You were devout.
Very, very much so.
I think about the word devout and the word coming from devotion and devoted. And I can relate to that a lot because when I left the faith after I was raised a Baha'i youth for a long time in New York City, I really saw that my religious fervor just moved to making art and making theater and acting. And we really believed that we could change the world with acting. And I had I was evangelical theater artist about, breaking down walls and bringing people together in new and exciting ways through performance. And I see that the Baha'i spirit really just shifted in a way for me to art in my 20s and early 30s. So I really relate to that.
I think one challenge that I felt was that I had become so used to putting in so much time and energy and thought into music, whether it was practicing, composing, writing songs. But then, of course, when I joined the faith, I realized there was all these other things that required, some of my time and energy, and that I wanted to do them. But, I also wanted to continue making music, and that also required a lot of time and energy. And so finding how to do both was tricky for me for a while. And I remember my brother. He early on, I told him about this challenge, and he said to me, try not to think of them as two separate things. Try to think of them as one thing. As that, this tree of music that you're growing. This is Baha'u'llah's tree of music, and you're tending to that.
I think that's such a beautiful. Sorry, I keep jumping in here, but that's such a beautiful way of looking at it, because ultimately it is all part of the same spiritual journey. Whether you're an artist or an accountant, your work, your occupation is an expression of yourself. We're told to have an occupation in the Baha'i Faith, and how important that is, and how much spiritual importance that is given. And in our friendships and in our family and in our work and in our teaching of the faith and serving the faith and serving in other ways that don't have to do with the faith, it's all part of one expression of our higher selves. As long as we are growing and deepening, enriching, and are flourishing our higher selves and giving that our higher selves to service, it's all for Baha'u'llah.
And I think that it's really what's going on inside that is the really important thing. So that even in forms of service that might seem very indirect, could in reality be very direct forms of service. Even in music, there were the sort of more obvious paths that I have tried to cultivate in terms of like setting the Baha'i writings to music, but there are other areas of music where I still try to say, for example, if I'm playing piano, even if there's no words, I still try to approach it in a way that I hope that this music is of service to the people who hear it. Or, even if I do a job where I'm hired to play music for something, to try to approach that in an attitude of service. And I think that, just a shift in attitude like that actually kind of resolved that early challenge for me in how to find that balance between, my life growing up in music and this newfound faith.
So when did you first pick up a guitar and say, I'm going to put some spiritual words of Baha'u'llah to music?
That was really when I moved to New York, very shortly after I became a Baha'i. It was in my early 20s, and I decided to move to New York.
Wait, an Irishman moving to New York?
How unusual. I must be a trendsetter. Yeah, I moved to New York, and really with no real plan in mind. But I think it was shortly after I had, my band had split up. I had found the faith, and that all had happened in kind of a short time, and I was craving for a change of scene. And so I moved to New York, and I decided that I would just go there, and I would probably somehow meet musicians there and do something new. I was putting things behind me in terms of what had happened with the band and everything. And I just wanted to, try and do something new. And around that time, I met Diane Badia in New York. There was a Baha'i friend there. I met at an open mic that happened every week at the New York Baha'i Center. And Diane used to sing at this open mic, and I would go there and sing as well. It was called The Cornerstone. It was this weekly open mic. It was great. There were songwriters and poets from, it was totally open door. Anyone would come in off the street and offer some song or poem or
that's great.
something they had to offer. At this open mic, Diane and I actually started singing together occasionally. And I had started around this time to play around with setting the Baha'i writings to music. I didn't really think of it as like, this isn't serious music. This is just a little hobby or something, But Diane had, really encouraged me to do more of it, because she had grown up singing the Baha'i writings. It was something very natural for her to do, to sing these, put melodies to the words. And so I started actually writing duets with the Baha'i writings with Diane's voice in mind. And so we started singing these songs around like devotionals in firesides around New York.
Do you remember the first one that you wrote with her?
The first one I wrote with her was, I think it was that same hidden word. It was "Thy Paradise Is My Love," which is now on the new album.
Oh, that's great. Can you sing the melody? What is the melody?
Yeah, it goes.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's a duet, so I can only sing half of it, but it goes. Thy paradise is my love, thy heavenly home, reunion with me. Enter therein and tarry not.
Oh,
And it goes on like that.
Oh, fantastic! That's great.
So we started putting together these songs, and over time we had a little handful of these duets, mostly of hidden words and a couple of prayers. And these songs have now, finally, after several years later, we've managed to record them and put them on the new album.
Oh, that's wonderful. I've noticed with so many Baha'i artists that they have long dormant CDs in them. They're like, I've been working on these Baha'i songs and I started these 15 years ago and I have enough for an album, but and it oftentimes will take a good decade or two for Baha'is to kind of, get it together to record it and master it and get it out. I know it's a lot of work, all that. It's one thing to write a song. It's another thing to record it properly, mix it properly, master it properly, release it properly.
And sometimes it takes several drafts, like sometimes it takes, you record it and, you spend some time listening to it and you realize that, it needs a little bit more work. So then you have to go back and do it again. And, several of these songs on the new album, took several drafts before we felt like, this is right now. This feels good.
That's great. Well, we got a little taste of your angelic voice, and would you be so kind as to share with us an acoustic version of one of your songs here today?
Sure, I'd love to.
Do you know what song you're ready to share with us?
Oh, actually, it occurred to me to do that one, but since I've just sung that one, maybe I should do a different one. Let me see. I'll do the opening song of the album. This one's called Beauty.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Yeah, take your time whenever you're ready.
Presence my drink and thy pleasure, my hope and praise of thee my action, and remembrance of thee my companion, and the power of thy sovereignty my succorer, thy habitation my home and my dwelling place, the seat thou hast sanctified from the limitations imposed upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee, upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee, upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee, upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee. Thou art verily the Almighty, the powerful, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the most powerful, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the most powerful.
Oh, wow. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Luke. Just gorgeous. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rainn.
Let's continue the conversations. You, on your albums, you use the paintings of Shireen Sabah on your album covers, and you commissioned her to do the new album cover as well. Can you tell us about? I love her drawings, and they're so evocative, and they suit your music so well. Can you tell me about this collaboration?
Yeah, it's I love Shireen's work. I've funnily enough, we've never actually met.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, but I've loved her work for years, and several years ago, I wrote to her, and I was preparing my first CD of devotional songs with the Baha'i Writings. It was Create in Me a Pure Heart. It was very simple, just guitar and voice. It was 4 songs. Actually, one of the songs was voice only, so it was a very simple, stripped down record. And while I was working on this, I wrote to Shireen. I had seen her work in different people's homes that I'd visited, and I just really fell in love with it immediately. And I wrote to her and I asked her if I could maybe use one of her paintings as the cover of this EP that I was doing. She very kindly gave me permission to use this beautiful blue kind of ocean scene with all these fishes in the water for that CD. Then a year later, I wrote to her again and said, "Look, I've got another EP coming out. It's 4 more songs. There's a little bit more music in it. It's a little bit richer. There's some, a little bit of strings, so a little bit of drums and bass. It's a little bit more detailed. And could I use another painting for this?" And she very kindly let me use another painting of hers. And then, I was feeling bad because she was letting me use this work, free of charge. Mm-hmm. So I said to her, "Look, I want to do something for you. I want to include an official commission for you as part of the Kickstarter campaign. So I want to raise the funds to actually commission a new painting."
Oh, that's beautiful.
So that I can properly, pay her for her work. And so I sent her a couple of songs as we were working on them in the studio from the new album. And they were kind of, they were half finished. We were still tracking. We were in the middle of mixing on some of them. And I just sent them over to her. I said, "Look, these are a few of the songs we're working on. They're very kind of colorful and vibrant. And the album is called Year of the Nightingale. And we're going to release it in honor of the bicentenary." So she took these songs and I kind of left her to it. And a couple of months later, she came back with this absolutely stunning painting for the cover, which what it does is it's a wide landscape painting, and it wraps all the way around the CD front to back, so it makes a really nice cover.
What is this CD of which you speak? What is that? Is that like an 8-track? Is that like yeah?
Yeah, almost as old. This is for the old schoolers in the Kickstarter.
Schoolers,
yeah. Limited edition.
I have a new car that doesn't even have a CD player in it.
Yeah.
So people give me CDs and like, I don't know. I don't own a CD player. I don't know where I could play it.
My laptop doesn't have a CD player, so I realized I can't actually play the CD myself.
So what are you reading right now from the Baha'i Writings or Baha'i history?
I'm reading an amazing book. It's called With Thine Own Eyes. It's an incredible, incredible book about the subject of independent investigation of truth.
There's that theme again. Okay.
Yeah, it is one of the most amazing, Baha'i-inspired books that I've ever read.
Who's the author?
There's actually 3 authors, and I can't remember all their names. One of them is Ronald Tomanio. There are 3, and they come from different backgrounds in psychology, philosophy, education. It's a fascinating book. The front of it says, "Why imitate the past when you can investigate reality?" And this is the theme of the book. And the book opens with...
Here, I have the authors, Ronald Tomanio, Diane Iverson, and Phyllis Ring, just to give
That's
them...
the one.
It's from George Ronald Publishing, and just to give them their fair due. Yeah, go ahead.
Can't recommend it highly enough. It's they begin the book with a message from the Universal House of Justice to the Baha'is of Italy in, I think, 1974. The Baha'is of Italy had written a letter to the Universal House of Justice asking what they should do in terms of financial contributions to developing countries, and how they could develop some kind of fund to send money to developing countries. Because, so many people were becoming very disturbed as the knowledge of the state of developing countries was becoming more widespread. Mm-hmm. And the Universal House of Justice wrote them this message. It's an incredible message. It's describing how, of course, they very, very lovingly acknowledge this and the sensitivity of these Baha'is in Italy who are expressing this concern about developing countries. And they say that there are agencies and organizations in the world working on these issues, material, financial issues, which the Baha'i community, really whatever the Baha'i community could offer in this way, it would only be a drop in the ocean compared to what these agencies and organizations can offer in terms of like material assistance and financial assistance. And the House of Justice directs the attention of these Baha'is to really focusing on the spiritual remedy that's needed for the very problems that they're talking about. And they break it down in this letter into these I think it's 3 or 4 points of how Baha'is can help this situation in a more with a more long-term vision in mind. And that is helping people of any country, in any state of development, to understand what they are, to what purpose they've been created, and how to live their lives. And then the authors of this book, they take these 3 statements of the House of Justice, and then each chapter in the book follows. So it's like a commentary on each of these statements in the letter, kind of breaking down how people can learn who they are, what they are, how they can learn to what purpose they've been created, and how they can learn how to live their lives. And with a much sort of longer term vision in mind, they state that this is really the work of the Baha'is. And one of the things they write in the letter is the importance of focusing our attention on building the good rather than fighting the evil. And how really, there is so much effort in the world is put into fighting evil, and it's with the most noble intentions.
Sure.
But often, with that effort to fight evil, sometimes there isn't a clear vision of what to build afterwards. And so
it's much easier to protest something that you perceive as negative than it is to be involved in the long, slow, difficult, consultative process of building something beautiful and noble and good that makes the world a better place.
Exactly. And I think that effort in fighting evil, it comes from a desire for justice. People see injustice, and they want to fight that. They want to change that into justice. So it is noble, but I think that, as Baha'is, I think we're very lucky that we have a clear vision of something we can build that can be beneficial and constructive. And really, if we put our energy into that, what the House of Justice says in this message is that if we focus on building the good, as hard as that may be, the evils in the world will, slowly collapse in on themselves, and our energy will have been put into building something good for the future.
Wow, that's beautiful. I'm going to definitely order that book. That sounds
yeah,
great.
It's a great book.
And what's your current spiritual test? What quote are you looking at? Where do your current struggles lie?
So one thing I'm struggling with is learning to, when you put so much work into something, and that you just find that there is so much to do, it's very easy to get yourself into a state of panic, and I'm prone to bouts of terrible anxiety sometimes, and I think I'm learning to notice those anxieties simply as anxieties, and try to consciously trust, very deliberately trust that, I don't know what's going to happen, but all I can do is do the work I need to do, get it done to the best of my ability.
It sounds like the Serenity Prayer in action. It's grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to do the things I can. It's such a simple and profound prayer. I wish it was a Baha'i prayer.
Yeah. It's I think that's exactly what I need at this time, because it's such a crunch time for the album, and getting everything lined up. It's been a very the whole recording process has been very spiritually infused. We would often begin our recording sessions with prayers. Obviously, the words we're recording, we're hearing them over and over again all day, every day in the studio, which creates a very highly charged atmosphere spiritually in the studio. Often working in the studio with Kelly, we would once a week we would take a break from our session, to have her junior youth group with local junior youth right there in the studio. So we would actually take a break from recording, and the local junior youth would come, and we'd have our session, and for a couple of hours, and then we'd go back to recording.
Right.
So there was this great atmosphere in the studio. But there's all of the kind of material aspects, the real sort of concrete, technological aspects of releasing an album. Getting it up online, getting it ready for distribution, and making sure it's accessible to everybody. A lot of these things can be, can create stress and anxiety.
So how do you find solace through your faith through these issues?
There's a particular prayer of the Bab, which I've been saying a lot. It relates to work. It's the one that goes, "O Lord, unto thee I repair for refuge, unto all thy signs I set my heart. Whether traveling or at home, and in my occupation or in my work, I place my whole trust in thee. Grant me then thy sufficing help, so as to make me independent of all save thee. O thou who art unsurpassed in thy mercy." I think it's something like that. This is the prayer I've been reading a lot lately to help me with the work that I'm doing at the moment, and just doing the work and then trusting that it will be okay. So
that's great. That's great. And what and finally, I would say, what advice do you have to young Baha'is, to young Baha'i artists, young Baha'i musicians? What can you say? There's so many that you meet that are wanting to start their journey as artists.
Yeah, I think first thing is put in the work. It is. I think any art form requires a huge amount of work. There's a poem I love by W.B. Yeats. It's called Adam's Curse. It's about the curse of the artist, and he describes the work that's involved in a poet writing a poem, carving up the words, or a songwriter writing a song, or a painter making a painting. It applies to any artist. And the artist has to put in so much work to get his craft to the point that it looks as if it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
But the curse in this, the result of this, is that people look at the work and then they think, oh, that was easy. He doesn't do any work. He's a slacker. And then so Yeats says, it would be better off to just get down on the floor and scrub the floor, and that way it would be kind of clear that we are really, really working hard. So the point of the poem, I think, is that art requires a lot of work. But I'm
so glad you said that. And again, here I am jumping in. I'm so glad you said that, because I do feel that it's crucial to know that artists put in years, decades, and 10,000 hours into mastery of their craft. And you're right, the end result is they make it look easy. I know that's the same way with acting, where these really great actors, you can just watch them, they're just standing there, they're just listening, and they're just saying some lines, and they're incredible. But the amount of plays they've done and classes and reading and studying that to get them to that point with just relaxed simplicity and emotional truth and connecting it all to language and pretending that you're in this moment it is extraordinary, and it's as much hard work as learning to be a surgeon, I think.
Yeah. So, I think for young artists, of any form, I think to keep the long term in mind. I think any artistic path, any path at all, but I think the ups and downs of an artistic path can be quite extreme sometimes, but can also be very rewarding, very fulfilling. And so I think of the long term, and I think of for young Baha'i musicians and artists, I think it's important to focus on excellence, and really don't try to be famous. Just focus on excellence, and don't worry about that other stuff. I think that's I think that is truly rewarding and can be beneficial for everyone who is either the purveyor or the recipient of excellence.
Oh, that's well said. Really beautifully, perfectly said. And let's end on that thought. And speaking of excellence, how's that for a transition? You're welcome, Luke. Can we use one of your songs? Can we end on one of your songs from the album?
Oh, I'd love that.
Okay, great.
Sure.
What song shall we end on?
So I think the song I would love to share with the listeners is one called Reckoning. This is a verse from the Hidden Words that goes, O son of being, bring thyself to account each day, ere thou art summoned to a reckoning. For death unheralded shall come upon thee, and thou shalt be called to give account for thy deeds. Of course, this was one of the very early Baha'i quotes that I read, because it's, I'm sure as many of the listeners know, this verse is one of the first quotes on the first page of the first Ruhi book. So anyone who has done the first Ruhi book would be familiar with this quote. Mm-hmm. So what Kelly and I tried to do in the studio with this one was we tried to really try and create a kind of a sense of urgency and intensity and time, kind of time passing with a sense of urgency around the words. There's in the middle of the song, there's a clave that comes in tapping, and it's almost like the ticking of a clock.
Yes.
So we wanted to create that sense of time driving forward, and the drums in this song it's one of my favorite songs for drums. There's this really amazing kind of urgent drum rhythm that comes in halfway through, which I love.
Bring thyself to account. Bring thyself
Oh, wow, that was amazing. Well, I'm so glad you put some urgency to it because it's such an important quote, and it's in all the religious faiths. I mean, the Christians believe that, and the Muslims believe it. That this is the day of reckoning, the day of judgment, and that conversation that we will have with Baha'u'llah. Are we going to hold our heads high and really be able to speak of our lives, or are we? It's just we're all going to feel some amount of shame, I imagine, but just to what degree? I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective and hopefully keeps one humble to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
I hope.
Humble and moving forward.
Humble and moving forward.
Like the claves of your song. Thank you, Luke Slott. You're the best. This was a beautiful conversation. Thanks for joining me, and good luck with the release of the album. And if people want to find your work, they can go to what website?
It's all on lukeslott.com.
Slott with two T's. Okay.
Slott with two T's. And all of the songs are being posted throughout the period of the fast. They're being posted on YouTube. Mm-hmm. As lyric videos. And they're simple. Each song has a simple video featuring the words of the song and on a background of Shireen Sahba's art.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh,
so these are all on YouTube. You can just look up the songs on YouTube and they'll...
That's beautiful. Thanks so much for your time, Luke.
Thanks a lot, Rainn. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Baha'i Blogcast. Hope you enjoyed the episode and the conversation. Check out more fun Baha'i stuff on Baha'iBlog.net. Thank you so much, and good night.